Hello everyone, so in today's tutorial I want to show you how to make this Sunburst Wirework bracelet, and this is what mine has ended up like. So using these materials here, so you get a nice large beads in the middle, kind of symbolise the sun of how I look at it, and then because of the weave that I've done and the colours of wires that I've used here, you get this kind of sunburst effect from the beads. So because I've used silver as the base wires and then the copper for the weaving, it gives you this really nice effect within the type of weave that I've done. And I've got the same going all the way around. And then I've also incorporated the clasp into the bracelet here. And you see the actual loop part is also incorporated into the actual design of where we add in the beads as well. And then you just make a hook and it opens like that. So it's a nice continuous piece and also nice and easy to use there with the clasp. You can also finish off the bracelet in a different way if you want to. Now this bracelet has ended up a little bit on the smaller side, so if you want to make more average size or larger size bracelet, you might want to add a few more beads to the design part here. That's obviously completely up to you and the size that you want, because you got to bear in mind as well, using this large beads as these, the depth of them is also going to take up some of the size. So you might want to make a long length, but you got to remember how deep your bracelet is as well. So in this case the beads also has an effect on the final size. So if you want to learn how to make this bracelet, then keep watching. So it's these materials here that we're going to need. Now I've got two different gauges of wire and also two different colours here. That's just what I've chosen to work with. I've got my thick gauge of wire here, that's a 1mm thickness. This is going to be the base wires for the piece. And then I've got my weaving wire here, it's a 0.4mm. So this is what we're going to actually make the weave with, and that's why I also chose two different colours, just so the weave would stand out a bit better. And then the beads that I'm using here, these are some 14mm rounds, and I'm just using some copper coated agate, and I've got these nice facets on. I just chose these because I thought it would go nicely with the theme that I've got going on for the bracelet, but you can use whatever ones you want to. I'm just using these 14mm rounds. So let's get it all together and let's get started. So before we can start, we need to cut some wires ready, and what I have here first of all is 3 lengths of my 1mm wire of about 80 centimeters each, and these ones are going to be the base wires throughout the bracelet. So the weaving wire we'll need is the length of a 0.4mm wire here, and this is about 8 meters long, so that is a very long length to work with, but we need this to be cut off the reel as well, so we can't work with this bracelet from the reel, because what we'll be doing is actually using both ends of the weaving wire at the same time. We won't be working with the full 8 meters in one go, because what we'll be doing is starting actually from the middle of the weaving wire here, and that's going to cut in half basically. So we're going to be working with 1/2 on each side. It's going to cut down the length a little bit, but you want to make sure you have enough to do the full bracelet. So this weave then takes up a fair bit of weaving wire, that's why we do need to use quite a bit for the full bracelet. So the first thing we need to do to start making the bracelet is the actual loop of the bracelet itself. So what I have here is 1 length of my 1mm wire, because we're just going to start off with one and then we're going to add the others in as we're making the weave. And then also we need the weaving wire. Now like I said, on both of the wires actually we need to start from the middle. So find about the middle of the base wire and then also the middle of your weaving wire. And then I'm going to start first of all by attaching the weaving wire here to the base wire. So find about the middle, and then I'm just going to wrap it around twice here, the weaving wire around the base wire, just twice, to get it attached so we can start making the weave, going straight into that. So I just wrap it around twice here, all the way to come back downwards again like that. And then make sure your wraps are nice and tight together, just like that. And then I'm going to bring in my next base wire and then lay it above the previous one. And then make sure again this is about the same place as the other base wire that you're weaving on. It's not too crucial just yet. You can always move the base wires once you've done a bit of weaving, but just do it around the middle here. And then what I'm going to be doing is the pyramid weave. So I'm going to show you how to do it, but I also have a tutorial that shows a bit more detail on how to do it. But what I'm then going to do is I've just wrapped twice around the single base wire on its own, the bottom one, and then my weaving wire here is coming down the back around the bottom of both of them, and then I need to bring this around the top over the cross of both of my base wires there, and then bring the whole weaving wire around across the top of them, back down the back. And now when you're doing these wraps here for this weave, because of the way it's done, you want to make sure that you're not pulling too tight on your weaving wire. So you basically just want to guide the weaving wire as you're doing it. So again, it's coming down behind the back. I want to lay it across the top of both of them again. And I'm just basically guiding it and laying it across. I'm not pulling it while I'm wrapping it. Because what that's going to do is close up the space between the base wires. And we don't want that, because then we won't be able to get the weaving wire back through them again once we completed one pyramid here. But then I've put it like this. So I've done 2 wraps around the single wire on its own, the bottom one. 2 wraps around both of them together. So I'm going to be doing constantly 2 wraps on each step basically. Then I want to bring in my last base wire here. So again, and also by the way, just make sure that your base wires are nice and straight. They don't have to be completely straight. It's fine if they have a curve, but just make sure they don't have any kinks and bends in them. Lay that above the others. So that's now the top one out of the wires. Then I take my weaving wire, it's coming down towards the bottom. Again, this goes over the top of all of them, because we're stepping up to create the first part of the pyramid. And again, like I said, I'm just guiding it and laying it across. I'm not pulling on the wire. Like that, down behind the back again. And because I want to do twice on every step, I go around the top of all of them again, and then down behind the back. And then get your weaving wire with you. And like that. So we've now basically reached the point of the pyramid there, so the very top. Now I want to go back down again. So kind of step down. What I'm going to do is again take my weaving wire across the top of them. Lay it across the top again without pulling on it. But then I need to go down between the top 2. So basically wrap around the bottom 2 wires here. So the same step that's right on the other side of all 3 that we wrapped together, that we've just done. So I go down between the top 2. Again, not pulling on my wire, but just guiding it. And then behind the 2 that I've just wrapped. So it's coming down towards the bottom. Again, lay it across the top of them. Come down between the top 2, so in the same place. Because like I said, we'll constantly, every step that we do, we'll wrap around it twice. Basically do a double wrap. And make sure you push it nice and tight together so your weave gets really nice and neat. And then I'm coming down below. Lay it across the top again. Now we want to step down once more. So this is going to step down to just wrap around the bottom wire on its own. So just how we started out. So I need to go down between the 2 wires that I just wrapped. Or down between the 2 bottom wires here. Push this all the way in so your weave is nice and tight. And then once more, because we're doing the double wraps. And push it all the way up. So there we go. That is now the first complete pyramid basically. And then what I want to do is do a few of these, because this is going to then be part of what forms the loop. So we want to go straight into making the next pyramid now. So that means that I'm going to then take my weaving wire here, lay it across the top of all of them. And we already want to start stepping up now. So I want to wrap around the bottom 2 base wires. Because it means coming down between the top 2. Because we've already done the single wrap, that's the one we just did. Again, push it all the way down, remembering that you're not pulling on your weaving wire, you're just guiding it around basically. Wrap around the same 2 again. Like that. Push it tight together. And then I need to get to the point here of the pyramid, the next one. So I'll put it across the top of all of my base wires. And then we also need to come down behind all of them, just like the other times. So across the top of them and then down behind all 3. And it's at this point especially where I keep saying, like, don't pull too tight on your weaving wire. It's quite crucial, because what will happen is, like I said, the base wires will close up, because that's what they naturally want to do if you pull too hard. But that especially means the bottom 2 base wires here, the gap between those are the ones that are going to close up first. And if you close them up too much, once we then step down and reach the point where we wrap around the single wire, the bottom on its own, you might not be able to get the weaving wire all the way in because they've gotten too tight. So that's why it's important to try and make sure that your base wires don't get pulled too close together. like that. Go around the top of them again because we need to do the double wrap. Just guiding your wire here. Go around the bottom and across the top of all of them. But now we need to step down, so go down between the top two base wires and push it down across, down the back of them, over the top again, down in the same place, so between the top two base wires. So there we go, down behind, and then we reach the point where we have to wrap the single one, so the bottom wire on its own. Like I said, this is the point where if you made it too tight, then it might be tricky to get your weaving wire all the way in and get a nice and tight weave. So try and keep your tension quite loose on this, not so loose that it gets messy, but just so you get a tension that doesn't close it up too much. So down between the bottom two base wires, and then push your weaving wire all the way in to finish off this pyramid as well. So there we go. I've now done two pyramids here basically, and you want to keep doing this. Do a few pyramids, enough length basically that's going to form the size of the loop that you want. So you can make your loop whatever size you want, but I'm just going to get back to you once I've reached the number that I want. So I now kept weaving here, and what I personally ended up with is 9 pyramids. So you can just count the points there. So like I said, you can make it whatever size you want to, but now what we need to do is start shaping this into the loop. So what I want to do is make sure the points are pointing outwards or away from me, because then I want to start shaping this. I'm keeping hold of all my base wires, and then gradually, just do this gently, I want to start shaping this weave to more of a round shape. Make sure that the base wires are staying flat, hence why I'm then kind of holding on to them. And what we need is to basically make this into a little bit of a circle or a loop, and the base wires, the ends of the weave, is going to then end up pretty much facing towards each other. So just gradually work it more and more into a nice shape for the loop there. So just take your time doing this, because you want to make sure the weaving wires and the base wires there stay nice and flat. So we're slowly getting there. And you can see the points of the pyramids there pointing outwards, and that's exactly what we want. And you can also get to a point here where you start to pull on the base wires instead. So just grab them, again make sure they're lined flat, and then you can gently just start pulling them towards each other, making sure that the weave continues to stay as flat. So kind of start getting this a little bit of a teardrop shape, and you can keep flattening out so you get, like I said, the very ends of the weave there are going to end up pretty much facing each other. So like that. And then what we need to start doing is getting our base wires ready. When you're happy with the shape and the size of the loop, the base wires then actually need to be intertwined with each other as well. So then to do that, we need to intertwine the base wires here, so also the loop that we made gets fastened in place. So basically imagine we have our base wires, and what they need to do is intertwine like that. So to do that, we just need to work with the lengths that we have here, so the tails on each side. You might just have to open it out a little bit. And then you just want to intertwine them by basically alternating one from one side and then one from the other side, and then keep going like that. And it doesn't matter really which ones are on top and which ones are on the bottom, as long as you then make sure to stay consistent throughout. So I take my next ones here, intertwine them like that, and the last one, get them in between the bottom ones. Just make sure they lie flat still so you don't have them crossing over in the wrong way. So something like this. And then you can slowly again pull them downwards. You'll be able to see it looks like this. So just make sure you check it before you pull it completely, because if you kind of overlap them or intertwined them in the wrong way, rather catch that now so you can redo it. But then basically you want to keep pulling this. So we got the shape in that loop in place from before, but then we want to get these base wires down basically as far as they'll go while keeping the loop as flat as possible still. so the weave part here. And obviously the base wires won't go all the way down right next to the weave. They can go pretty close, but not all the way, because when you think about it, the weaving wire is a 0.4 mil and the base wires is a 1 mil, and that's why you can't get the base wire that's in between the other base wires here all the way down, because the spacing just isn't wide enough. But that's why you just get them as far down as you can, just so they sit right and it still looks nice as well. So something roughly a little bit like this. And then it'll also stay better in place when we move on to do the next step as well here. So to then secure it a little bit better in place, so it again gets easier to work with to move on to the next step, we have the weaving wires coming out towards the back here. It's the same on both sides here. And it's coming from the very last wrap that you did. So what I'm going to do is make sure that, like I said, these base wires are pushed as far down as they'll go. Then I'm going to take one of my weaving wires, bring it from underneath and just underneath all these wires that are now intertwining, and then just up towards the top like this, and then make sure they're pushed together. And then what I'm going to do is do my first wrap here, and I'm going to do it around the very first wire from the top now, so the first one right in the corner there. Just do it on the same side that this wire is coming from anyway, the weaving wire, and you want to just wrap around that one all the way down to the point where the base wires are crossing over there, and then I'm wrapping around again just the single wire, so twice, and then just make sure that your wraps are pushed nice and close together, because again this is going to be part of your weave still, so it needs to look as neat as possible. So like that, and you can do the same thing with the other one. So I'm going to take the weaving wire, again it's coming from downwards from behind the loop, so bring it up underneath and just basically straight up. You want to do the same on this side. Bring it around the very top one of your base wire, so this one here, and just wrap it around that one on its own twice, because then, as you might be able to tell, this is the beginning of the weave that we've already been doing. We're going to keep doing the same weave. We're just going to start in this section up here now. Once more around that same base wire and push it all the way down. And again, make sure that the wraps are nice and tight. So there we go. Now I've got my two weaving wires coming basically straight upwards. Obviously depends how you're holding it, but straight out from this little corner where the base wires are overlapping. And now what we need to do is pick up the weave again. So you just want to work with one side at a time. Doesn't really matter where you start, because you'll be going over to the other side and doing the same thing. And you just put the others out of the way for now. So I'm going to hold it comfortably here. Make sure your base wires are nice and straight, in the sense that it doesn't have any kinks or too harsh curves in it. It's fine if it has somewhat of a curve, but just something like that. And because while you're working with it, it can come a little bit out of shape, so just straighten out before you keep weaving, because you want to make sure the wire that you're weaving onto, it's got a nice and straight shape without having too many kinks in it. So we need to continue the same weave. So that just means I bring my weaving wire back over the top of the one that I just weaved here. But obviously, like I said, it's the same weave, we're just kind of working with it a little bit differently. You can also easily move your piece around how it's comfortable to work with. But then what I need to do is step up first of all to make the next pyramid. So I'll go over the top of the top two here. So just the one that I already wrapped once, but then the next one up, like that, down below, back over the top of the same two, because it's the same weave, so we're doing twice around each section. Get it through there in between the bottom two base wires basically. Make sure you push your wraps nice and tight. And again, same principle as before, try and make sure you don't pull too hard on your weaving wire, because you don't want these base wires to come too tight together, because obviously that's going to obstruct doing the actual weave. Then we need to go over the top of all three base wires, like this. Down behind them all, again over the top of all three, to do the second wrap, like that. Come across the top of them, but then we need to start stepping down again, because this is the point, because there's no more base wires left. So I need to go in between the bottom two here to just wrap around the top two again, working our way back downwards towards the point where we're just wrapping around the single one on its own. Push it down nice and close like that, over the top again, wrap around the same two, making sure you're never pulling too hard on the weaving wire, over the top of them. And now, because I've just done double wrap there, we need to just do this double wrap around the single wire. That's the very top one in this case, how I'm holding it, or the bottom one in the pyramid, however you want to look at it. Push it all the way down, because if you don't pull too tight on your weaving wire as you're making your pyramids, doing the single wrap here shouldn't be a problem. But if you do find it hard when you get to the single wrap again here, it's the same doing this one, any part of the pyramid weave here. If you find it hard to get your weaving wire all the way down, right close to the other wraps when you get to the single wrap, it probably means that you pulled a little bit too tight, too hard on your weaving wire. Then try and just adjust your tension a little bit. So there we go, that's the first pyramid. And then basically I want to keep doing this. We need to do a few pyramids on this side, and then the same amount on the other side here. So you just pick up this weaving wire on the other side, do your first pyramid, and then do the same amount on both sides. Because then we reach the point where it's the middle on each side of this little section that we're doing, and that's where we then need to add in our very first bead. So I've now kept weaving here on both sides, and what I've ended up with is 3 pyramids on each side there. So we've now reached the same point, and it's going to be the midpoint of the weave on each side for this little section. And this is also the point now where we need to add in the bead. So before we can do that, we just need to get the wires in position. So, because right now obviously all the base wires are kind of just going out to the side here. We need them to come back in to shape around the bead. So what I'm going to do is kind of grab hold of the piece at the beginning of, I'm just going to do one side at a time. Grab hold of the bottom here, the base wires, and then on the other side of the weave, just gently start shaping it around, kind of just like we did down here, but just back inwards. So we're now kind of working against the curve that the wire has already. And we obviously don't want this to come all the way back into the middle, because remember this is the midpoint. So that means it's going to sit right on the side of the bead. So we just basically need the wires, base wires, to actually kind of facing upwards, straight upwards instead. And then we can just do this for now. We can always adjust it a bit more. Do the other side as well. So grab hold of the base wires and then start maneuvering them, gently making a curve in it by shaping them inwards. You can slowly start to see that here. And again, keeping the base wires with the weave nice and flat as well. So something a bit like this, and try and make sure that when you do this along the way as you're making the rest of the bracelet as well, that you kind of make a straight line, so you don't want it to be starting to go towards one side or the other side too much. But you can adjust that and make sure to keep an eye on that as you go. So something like that. It doesn't have to be perfect just yet, because as long as you have the wires in position here, we then need to actually add in the bead. We can just keep adjusting a little bit, because obviously we do need to have enough space for the bead to actually fit into it. So to add in the bead, we need to use the weaving wires, and we have one coming from each side. So what I'm going to do, they're coming from behind and kind of pointing back. I'm going to bring them around to the front, but through the middle of the piece here. Both sides, because we need both wires to attach the bead. And obviously for now the weaving wires are still quite long, but it's going to get shorter for every section that we do make. So I've got both of my weaving wires coming through the piece now, and I just finished with the very last pyramid there out of the 3. So we have these 2 weaving wires. Now we need to get the bead. So I'm grabbing my round large bead here, and then I want to grab one wire first of all. So one of my weaving wires here, put it through the bead in one direction. So I'll just take in the one from the left side and put it through the bead. I'm not going to bring it all the way down just yet, because then I want to grab the wire from the other side all the way to the end, and then we need to take this through the bead but in the opposite direction. So the one from the right side goes through the bead towards the left then, like that. So we're crossing through the bead with both weaving wires but in opposite directions, and then we just want to basically pull this down and just do it gently, because obviously you don't want your wire to kink or anything. So pull it all the way down so the bead ends up sitting right there in between the two sections of base wires, just like that. And you can see it's going to fit just perfectly with where the hole in the bead is, to be basically halfway up there. And at this point you can then just have a look at your piece, and this is where you can just, if you need to do any last adjustments, so with the spacing, if you need to open it up a little bit, or if it fits just perfectly, because you want it to be nicely shaped around the bead. And then I want to take my weaving wires and I actually want to bring them back underneath all the base wires, so they're naturally coming out over the top of them. I want to actually bring them back underneath, because that way when we continue and pick back up the weave again, the same weave, it's going to just blend in, because we don't really want to see a gap here if we can help it. Do the same on the other side. Take your weaving wire and bring it around the back of all the base wires. So just like this. And then again your base wires are coming pretty much straight upwards. And then we're basically in a position now to just continue the weave, so pick it back up again. And again, just start with one side first. So I'm just going to start over here. I've got my weaving wires, so the weaving wires as well have now actually swapped sides, by the way. We're going to do this throughout, but it doesn't really matter. And then what you need to bear in mind is we're going to pick up the same weave, but if you look here, the very last pyramid that we did, we finished on the single wrap, the double wrap around the single wire there, sorry. And what we would do to then do the next pyramid is do a double wrap around two base wires. So the inner one that's furthest towards the bead, but we already did those, the single ones, so I need to go straight into doing the double one around the two base wires. So basically stepping up, do that again without pulling too hard on your weaving wire, to make sure that you're not pulling your base wires too tight. You do a double wrap, push it down, and then it's pushing it down here and pushing your wraps nice and tight. It's going to push it right down, right next to the last pyramid you did before, and that's what's going to kind of close it up so it doesn't look obvious that there's a gap or anything where you added the bead. Now I need to step up, so I'm going around over the top of all three base wires, and again do that twice, and all the way around the back. So we've gotten to the point now of the next pyramid, right after the bead. Now to step down, I go in between the two outer base wires and come up between like that, continuously making sure I don't pull too hard. Come over the top of those two inner base wires that's furthest, closest to the bead there. So as you can see, it's the exact same weave that we're doing. We're just kind of incorporating the bead into it along the way, but the basic principles are the same. Push it down. Now to the last double wrap around the single wire, the one that's right close next to the bead. Use that also to push everything nice and close together. That really pushes all your wraps really nice and close. And like that. Once more to make it that double wrap. There we go. And then this is your first pyramid on this side after adding in the bead. And it looks like that. And you can see it just blends in and sits right next to the previous pyramid. So we obviously want to do the same amount here as we did before we added the bead. So that means we're going to do another 3 in total on this side. So I need to do another 2 after this one. So we get a total of 6 on each side. So you want to do the exact same thing over here as well, because obviously it'll be the same distance from down here. So we have 6 pyramids on each side of the bead in total when you're done. And then once you've done that on both sides here, I'm going to show you the next step. When you then reach this point, like I said, where we have 6 pyramids in total on each side, and then also including the bead there, then we need to have the sides be coming in towards each other again. So basically repeat this step down here. So again, you want to just kind of keep hold. I like to put my thumb and my finger on the base wires, but now closer to the bead, and then gently start shaping this back inwards again, giving it a nice curve. And you can kind of use the shape of the bead as a guide and gently bend it against it to come back inwards there. Same on the other side. Gently make your curve back inwards so that when we have them meeting up like this, the ends of the weave are basically again meeting up there, so we got the perfect amount of our pyramids. And then what we need to do when we're at this point, we need to then intertwine the base wires again. So the exact same principle. What you just want to then be aware of is I recommend doing it the same way that you did down here. So that means the one coming from the right side is the one that's going to be the top one. So I'm just going to actually swap these over. Like I said, while you're intertwining them, might open up just a little bit, but you can just reshape it. Most important thing is that we've got the basic shape in place. So the one from the right is this one is the top one, and then the one from the left will be the next one after that. So I'll bring that in between the top one and the next one on the right side, like that. And then the next one from the right side is naturally there. Then I take the next one from the left. Just make sure you grab the right one. It happens to be the middle one in between the next two, and then the rest are in place naturally. So there we go, and then you can just run your wires through your fingers to help kind of bend them then in the opposite direction again, so just make it more comfortable to work with. And just make sure you constantly smooth out your wires so you don't have any obvious too many kinks or bends in it, but just keeping it with the curves. And then just spend a bit of time getting your base wires as close as possible, as far as they'll go down towards the weave there. Again, you can't get them closer than they can go, because obviously, like I said previously, the weaving wire is thinner than the base wire, so they'll only go so far. But then once you're there, we have the weaving wire coming again through the middle there where the bead's attached, and then it's coming towards the back. I need to use this to fasten my base wires in place. So I hold them where I want them to sit, where I'm happy with it, and try and kind of keep hold of that. The one on the right side, I'm just going to stick with the right side. I'm going to bring that out underneath and then just wrap it around the one that's kind of the top one from this angle. So just a single wire, which is again just like before, the beginning of the next section with the exact same weave. So this is the first part of our first pyramid here. Do double wrap around that single base wire. So that's that one. Same thing on the other side. Just keep it together there. Bring the weaving wire underneath and straight upwards, and then just take that and wrap it around the very top one from this angle. And push that wrap all the way down, basically into that little corner there where all the wires are intertwining. Once more for the double wrap, and push that all the way down. Make sure your wraps are nice and tight. So there we go. We're now basically in the exact same position as we were down here, where we started off this section there, and all you want to do now is keep repeating the same thing. So make sure you smooth out your base wires so they're nice and straight, or at least they don't have any kinks in them. And you want to pick back up with your weave. So do 3 pyramids first on each side, then we want to crisscross the weaving wires through the bead, and then do another 3 pyramids after that, and then you intertwine the base wires again. And you basically just keep doing this, keep going like this, making sure that you just overlap the base wires in the same way every time, just to try and keep it consistent. And then do this until you reach almost the length that you want your bracelet to be, obviously accounting for the fact we just want to make the other end of the clasp as well. So I now kept going here, and then what I have is almost the full length of my bracelet. So the main part is done. So now what we need to do up here is finish off all our wires and also be able to make the other end of the clasp, so we can then obviously use it. Now first of all, what I want to do is finish off my weaving wires, because we're done using them for now. So to do that, we've ended up doing a single wrap around the bottom base wire on its own, and that's how we want to finish off our weaving wire. So all I'm going to do is I'm coming to the back here where my wires are coming out, And then I'm going to go in with my flush cutters and cut off the excess and leave about just 1 millimeter or so, like that. Because then what you'll find is just the very tip of the wire there sticking out, and you'll be able to feel it. So what I want to do is then take my chain nose pliers, go in right on that end and press it down, and then I like to roll it a little bit in the direction that the weaving wire is going around the base wire, because then what happens is it tugs in, just leaving that 1 millimeter or so, just ends the actual end of the wire, tucks in between the base wires there, and that's a really nice way to finish it off, because then you don't have the end of the weaving wire sticking out anywhere and you're able to catch or scratch on anything. Do the same thing with the other one. Towards the back, cut it down so you just have about 1 millimeter or so, just enough to, like I said, tuck it away in between the base wires. Do the same thing, get your chain nose, press it in, and then do a little roll around your base wire just to get it right in there between the base wires. So there we go. I've now finished off the weaving wire, so all this I have to do is finish off the actual base wires, but then also make the other end of the clasp. So what I actually want to do is the same thing that we've done throughout. I want to intertwine these ends of my base wires here. So again, I want to make sure that the same one that I've done throughout is the one that's on top. So that's the one coming from my right side, looking at it like this. That's still the top one. Then I'm going to take the others and intertwine them one at a time, like that. So the top one on the other side goes underneath the top one that we want at the very top. And then just do that all the way down till you have them all intertwined, just like we did throughout the bracelet. So it looks a little something like that. And then now what we want to do is we can just pull in there so it gets in place. We obviously want that last link or last section there to look just pretty much the same as the others. But then now we're in place with the base wires where they intertwine like that, just like I showed you before. They intertwine that way there. So one from one side, one from the other, and then back and forth like that. So now what I want to do is use this little section where we intertwined them to then actually also finish them off. So what I'm going to do is start from the top here, so kind of from the front of the piece, and the wire that's at the very top, so the one that crossed over at the top there, I want to grab that first, and then what I want to do is have it come down towards the other side there, so on top of the wires that's coming from the other side, and then bend it around the back of those and towards the back of the bracelet. So like this, you can see it there. It's bending from the front over to the other side and then around the back. And then we have it ending right there. And then what I want to do to finish it off, we need to secure it as well. So I'm actually going to go in and then take some wire cutters, some flush cutters here, and I want to cut them down so I get rid of the long length. But I want to leave just a little space. So cut it down so you have maybe a few millimeters left. You want to basically have enough left to just have an end that you can then curl back and wrap around the very back base wire there. So basically the one that we're just coming across now, I want to just kind of wrap it around that. So I'm going to just cut it down. So I just have a little length left on it. Something like that. And then I'm just going to get a pair of round nose pliers. That's a little bit easier to work with. And then I want to just get my kind of curve started. So I just grab the very end of it and just start getting it inwards there. Obviously we can't really do it the whole way because the actual wire is in the way of the pliers. So what I'm going to do is switch over to some chain nose pliers or flat nose. And then I want to then continue squeezing this in around that base wire that I said that we're kind of wrapping this around to secure it in place. So just take your time, do this. Make sure it goes towards the back there. And then squeezing it nicely around that base wire also secures it in place. You want to make sure try and make sure everything stays in place. You can go back to the front and see how it looks if you're still happy with it, or if anything needs to be readjusted. Then do that along the way rather than wait too long. But then something roughly like this, and keep squeezing. I actually think I just need to cut off a little bit more. So just get right in there. I'm just going to take my other flush cutters. Get a little bit of a finer head to them. Just cut off a little bit more because the other wire was a little bit in the way, and then just squeeze that nicely around. So just like that. So that one is now finished off. Now we need to go to the next one. So now the next one that's on top of long ones that we still have left, that's one on the other side here. You want to do the exact same thing with that, so the same principle. Going to bend that around towards the side that it's coming to, towards the back, have it come all the way around the back here, and the same principle, cut down your length of wire so you only have a short little length left. And then I'm going to grab my round nose pliers again, come in from here, and then just give it a little curl before I then start squeezing it. It just helps the wire go in the right place. And like that. Grab my chain nose or flat nose and then start squeezing it in the rest of the way, just gently. And then also that secures that in place. Look from the front, see if it still looks nice. And then basically you want to keep doing this. So now take the next one that's now on top that we haven't finished off yet. It's the one on the opposite side again. Take it towards the back. And then keep doing the same thing. And what you want to do is finish off all the wires except for the very last one. So you keep going from side to side, finishing off that one. Then I take the other side here. Then I go to the opposite side. And then once you have one wire left, you want to leave that. You don't want to finish that off because we'll be using that to then actually make the clasp with. So do that, and then when you've done all these wires and finished them off, I'll show you the last step of how to make the clasp. So now that I've finished all my base wires off here, except for that very last one right at the tip that we're going to use for the clasp, then what we need to do is use this to make it. So what I'm going to do is grab some flat nose or chain nose pliers, and then right now it's going at an angle there. What we need to do is have it go straight up. So I'm just going to grab my pliers and then just bend it so it ends up going straight up here. And then you just want to make sure that you're straightening it out so it doesn't have any kinks or bends, and you get it nice and straight, because obviously we want to make sure the clasp is going to be nice and neat and function properly. So just get it in just the right position, and then what we're going to do is make a little hook to go in to the loop there on the other end, and that's quite simple. So what I'm going to do is go up. How long you want the hook to be is up to you really. What I'm going to do then is place my pliers while I have my piece sideways, like that. And then you can do a few centimeters, like I said, it's up to you really how long you want the hook to be. But I'm going to hold on to it, and then I'm going to take the end of my wire here, bend it back onto itself, around the pliers, straight back down again. As you can see, just like that. And then I want to squeeze this kind of little, almost a prong you could say we've made, but there's a space, an opening between the two, well, there's one wire but the two sides there. So I just want to put my pliers onto that very end, and I want to get it kind of right towards the back of my pliers. It gives a bit more control. And you want to squeeze them together, and sometimes it might flip like that on you, and that's fine. You just bend it back, but you want to squeeze this so you get it as nice and tight as possible. You can also leave it a bit more open if you want to. It's completely up to you. That's more of a design choice. But then you want the tail here to be coming straight back down the side of itself, just like that. So we have a nice and straight length of wire now. So now what we need to do is obviously secure it in place because we just have this open length. So what I'm going to do is place my pliers so I have just a little bit of space left from the very end of my bracelet there where the wire's coming out from, and up to my pliers here that I'm holding on to my piece with. What I'm just going to do is then bend this upwards. Also gets it a little bit out of the way. Up against my pliers, just straight up, because then I can have it sitting straight next to itself there. And then I'm basically going to do a wrap around the other end of the base wire there. So kind of like if you're familiar with making a wrapped loop, it's similar to that, except it's not a loop, it's just kind of this length of wire that's going to then turn into a hook. But I then want to gradually get this around, and this is what's going to secure it in place. So just fill up that space that we've left between the end of the bracelet and the pliers. Make some nice and tight wraps there. And then once you've done a few, you filled up the space and you're quite happy with it, it's going to be nice and secure. What I'm going to do is just want to get it all the way around here. Just going to make it a nice and neat finish. I'm then going to take my wire cutters or flush cutters again, cut off the excess. So like that. And then, same as every time you cut off a wire, you're always going to have just a little bit sticking out there. You can feel it when you run your finger over it. So you always want to make sure that you just take your pliers and just press that in. So do it a little squeeze. It's going to nestle it in there. And keep squeezing it in until you run your finger over it and then you can't feel it. Because that means it shouldn't catch or scratch at anything. So if you can feel it still, just squeeze it a little bit more. So there we go. So that is basically the end. All we need to do now is actually then make it into a hook. So for that, I'm just going to grab my 6-step bail making pliers here, just because if you use a pair of round nose pliers, your round nose pliers are tapered. So like these, they're tapered as you can see. So if you use these and bend it back, you're actually going to get them slightly different on each side. So that's why I prefer to use, say, pliers like these, or you could use a mandrel of some sort that you have that's the right size. So I'm going to take these and place it roughly around the middle of this section now. I'm going to take the end and bend it back around the plier, over the top. So we just get this little hook, something like that. And then I always just like to take my flat nose or chain nose right at the very end there. I'm just going to grab these, they're a bit finer. The very end of it, I like to just grab that and just kick it up a little bit. Just makes it easier for it to catch into the loop. So there we go. That's now the hook in place. So all that's left to do really now is shape the actual bracelet. So to do that, you can either fold it around something that's got the shape and size you want it to be, or you can just gently do it with your hands. So you just want to, a bit at a time, give it a nice curve. Just take your time. Make sure you don't go to one place and kind of give it a bend. That'll put your bracelet out of shape and probably end up making it hard to then give it back into a nice shape. So I like to kind of just go a little bit all over and then gently go from side to side a bit at a time to get a nice gentle curve in there, and it's going to move further and further towards the right shape. So just gradually working with it. And I prefer to make my bracelets more of an oval shape rather than, say, a round one, because when you think about it, our wrists are more oval, and I find that ends up making the bracelet sit a bit better on the wrist, and also preventing it a bit more from, say, sliding around, so you get the back or the clasp part to sit around the front. It tends to happen less if you make it more oval rather than round. So just keep going, and then once we're getting here, you can see the hook is then going to go straight into the loop, and then that's your bracelet. And it works really nicely there, also because the hook is obviously a nice simple little one there, but you have this really nice design actually on the loop that then goes in with the rest of the bracelet. So it does give a really nice look. It's not too crucial if that flips around to the front, because you still have the nice design of the clasp, but then that's your finished bracelet. So that's how you make this. You can obviously make it whatever size you want to. Use whatever materials that you want to as well. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it useful as well. And thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this large waves wirework bracelet. And this is what it looks like. So you have these like large wave shapes going around your beads with some wire weaving in it. So if you want to learn how to make that, then stay tuned. And here are the things that we'll need.